It's kind of like saying I can't touch pencils because I'm allergic to penicillin.
I wake up in the morning with a really bad hangover. It must be from the sulfites?
No. The reason why wine has to be labeled contains sulfites in North America is due to one man. A single, horrible, despicable man.
Hello, everybody. Welcome again to Questioning Tim and Canadian Craft Tours. Today we're here to talk about sulfites and the allergic reaction some people claim to have to sulfites. Tim, what do you mean when you use the term sulfites?
Well, sulfites are a stable form of elemental sulfur, that yellow powder that people are familiar with. And stable salt of an element just means that it's been bound to another mineral so that it is stabilized and doesn't degrade or decay. And sulfite is widely used in food processing and in other industries. So it's a very common chemical that we see.
And what is the main use of sulfites?
Well, sulfites are widely used as a preservative, both in wine and in other foodstuffs. In fact, it's present in a lot of different things that you may eat or drink. It's also used to prevent color changes, browning, and spoilage in a variety of other things, including medications.
And are sulfites the same as sulphites?
That's a great question. The PH spelling is an empire thing. It's a British holdover spelling. But the F is more North American, more modern spelling. But they are exactly the same thing. When someone says sulfite or sulphite, it's the same deal.
Okay. Now, we've heard a lot about allergies to sulfites. What types of reactions can be caused by sulfites?
Well, sulfites in themselves are not especially dangerous, but you can have a reaction to them because they act as an irritant. For instance, if you suffer from asthma and are exposed to sulfite powder or the vapor that comes off a liquid sulfite solution, it can cause wheezing, it can cause coughing, and it can cause irritation of the bronchial tubes and the eyes. It can be quite sensitive. But this is a pretty temporary reaction, and as long as you're not staying in the presence of the vapor or the powder, it'll go away immediately. So sulfites can cause reactions that might resemble an allergy, but they're not. They're simply a reaction to the irritation. It can even form urticaria, which are what people call as hives if you have moist skin or you have a skin condition. But to call those allergic reactions is incorrect. It's an irritation. It would be like drinking lava and then complaining that the burns and that you've got on your mouth and throat come from liquid hot magma allergy. It's not the case. It's just a reaction. An important thing to remember here is that allergy is a very specific medical symptom. When analyzed, people who have claimed to have suffered anaphylaxis through exposure to sulfites, it's turned out to be either a different trigger or not anaphylaxis at all.
What are the mechanisms for adverse reactions to sulfites?
The adverse reaction usually takes place in the bronchial tube. You get a whiff of sulfite, either from the powder again or the concentrated solution, and it causes a contraction of the tubes, which seems like shortness of breath and can cause coughing or wheezing. There's also a potential reaction from people who lack the enzyme sulfide dioxidase. This helps break down sulfite in the body. And if you don't have enough of it, you can feel it a little bit more sharply than others do.
Is sensitivity to sulfites a different condition from sulfonamide antibiotic or sulfadrug allergy?
That's a great question. No, they're very different compounds. They're not related in any way at all except for the spelling. People who say, well, I can't take sulfites because I'm allergic to sulfadrugs, it's kind of like saying I can't touch pencils because I'm allergic to penicillin. It's just not a thing.
Do people who react to sulfites need to avoid sulfates or sulfur?
No, not at all. A lot of products contain sulfates or sulfur compounds in their makeup. And things like shampoo will have a compound called sodium lauryl sulfate. It's not the same thing at all. We go back to the sulfadrug sulfite thing. It's not connected. You're fine. Now, there is elemental sulfur used sometimes in gardening, and it's a yellow powder that you sprinkle on plants or around them to prevent molds or mildews. On the other hand, if you're snorting elemental powders at random, perhaps you have more problems than a reaction to sulfur.
How is suspected sulfite sensitivity diagnosed?
It can't be. There is no allergy test for sulfites because that's not how allergies work. That's not how they work at all. So the only way that you can diagnose sulfite sensitivity is by observing a reaction to it. And usually those are very mild and under the circumstances I've already mentioned. Inhaling the powder, getting a whiff of the vapor that comes from a liquid solution. Also keep in mind, we're having a chat about sulfites in wine. If you suspect you're having an allergic reaction, consult a licensed medical professional or an allergist. Or if you're having trouble breathing, dial 911.
What drinks and foods contain sulfites?
You wouldn't believe it. The list is enormous. In fact, a lot of things that you wouldn't suspect containing sulfite do. Things like preserved meat, instant noodles, canned tuna, for instance, is loaded with sulfites. It's used in the industrial processing of food to prevent browning. So your French fries that are from a fast food joint have been dipped in a sulfite solution to keep them shiny and white so they crisp up nice and don't turn gray. Here's a partial list.
And how can I tell if foods have sulfites in them?
It's not easy. Not all foodstuffs require the sulfite declaration statement, unlike wine. Your best bet is probably to contact the manufacturer or ask directly the person who's making your food for you.
Are low or no sulfite wines and beers and any other type of beverage available?
There are certain types of wines that say they are no sulfite added or low sulfites. But the bottom line is, due to the fact that yeast actually manufacture sulfites as a byproduct of their own metabolism, there is no such thing. Never has, never can, never will be such a thing as a sulfite-free wine or sulfite-free beer. They will always have trace amounts. That's why, despite strict labeling laws in North America, a wine that has no added sulfites and is declared natural or biodynamic or even kosher will still have to carry the warning label that says, "Caution, contains sulfites," because everything does.
All right, perfect. As always, Tim, you put my mind at ease.
Glad to.
I get this question all the time on our tours from people saying, I'm allergic to sulfites. Are there sulfite-free wines? I wake up in the morning with a really bad hangover and a really bad headache. I'm nauseous. It must be from the sulfites.
No, it's usually from another source. And principally, the headache and ill feeling that you get from a night of drinking wine is from alcohol. Alcohol is actually not great for your body, especially if consumed in excess amounts. And if you've gone overboard, you are going to feel it in the morning. Now, the headache from wine can come from one of two sources. If you are a migraine sufferer, the headache that comes on from wine will be pretty much instant, and it'll be unpleasant. That is not triggered by sulfites, and it's not triggered especially by wine either. The primary trigger of that is, in fact, alcohol. The good news is that most migraine sufferers understand their condition and manage it very well. And in fact, surveys show that migraine sufferers tend to drink a lot less alcohol than the general population. Now, the other headache that you get in the morning of the night before, where you feel terrible and full of regret and anxiety, that comes from your body trying to break down alcohol in your bloodstream. And the hangover itself and the headache stems from the fact that you break down alcohol in two steps. Number one, the alcohol gets broken down in your body by alcohol dehydrogenase, and that's a great first step. The second step is you need to break down alcohol from that acetaldehyde phase by acetaldehyde dehydrogenase, and that's a little slow. And what that means is that you've got acetaldehyde circulating in your blood for a period of time, and it's roughly the equivalent of having nail polish remover in your body. It's pretty unpleasant, leaves you feeling pretty awful and sick. The upshot is, if you are going to drink alcohol, make sure you have some food before you go on the drink. That helps slow down the absorption of alcohol and gives your body a chance to process it. Make sure you drink plenty of water. It's important to stay hydrated. Alcohol can act as a diuretic. And number three, always drink in moderation. Know your limit, stay within it, stay happy, stay safe.
Why does red wine give me a headache and white wine doesn't if it's not about sulfites?
Now this is really key. When people say, oh, I can't drink red wine, the sulfites give me a headache, but I can drink white wine, the alarm bells go off, because the truth is that white wine contains a lot more sulfite than red. Red wines have tannins in them and polyphenol compounds, and they act as natural preservatives. So winemakers add less sulfite to them. It's just the way they're done. White wines, on the other hand, are more delicate, have more delicate aromas, and they don't have the benefit of those polyphenols/tannins, so they require a higher dosage of sulfite. So if you can drink white but not red, there's no connection to sulfite, period. The answer itself is a little strange and a bit counterintuitive. Where the reaction comes from when you're drinking red wine is likely to be a bioamine reaction. Now, bioamines are produced by plants for their own defenses. They cause predators or people consuming them to suffer a reaction. And you can get the idea from the name. Bioamine is the reason why people take antihistamines. They're allergens. Now, in red wine specifically, the red wine is often treated with a secondary fermentation called malolactic fermentation. And that term is coined because the bacteria that they add to it ferments malic acid, which has a taste that's sharp and quite aggressive like a green apple, and converts it into lactic acid, which is the same acid you find in milk and milk products. Very soft, very gentle. Now that's great. It softens the red wine. It adjusts the pH, which helps the flavor fall into focus, and it does some other things. But the main other thing that it does is it produces bioamines, and a lot of them. So they can really mess with you, causing an allergic reaction, stuffy nose, red face, medicine head, and general ill feelings. Now, the other thing that a malolactic fermentation produces is diacetyl. And diacetyl is a chemical compound that smells like butter or melting butter or melted popcorn butter. The popcorn microwave bag thingies, they are actually spritzed with diacetyl in order to evoke that very buttery smell. Now, in red wines, that's a nice little added layer on top of things like oak and tannin and whatnot. But in white wines, it's done to very big, rich wines to add another layer of voluptuousness. If you've ever heard a wine described as, ooh, I like a big buttery Chardonnay, what they're describing is the after effects of a malolactic fermentation layering on that diacetyl. But that wine will have significant amounts of bioamines and can provoke that reaction.
If it's not sulfites, then why does wine in North America have to be labeled contains sulfites? And why does wine from Europe not contain any sulfites?
This is the question, and it has kind of an unfortunate answer. The reason why wine has to be labeled contains sulfites in North America is due to one man. A single, horrible, despicable man. That man was named Strom Thurmond. He was a congressman in America in South Carolina. In addition to opposing civil rights for human beings and generally being really not a great person, he also hated alcohol with the kind of fervor that you'd expect from someone of his era and political leaning. He hated it so much that he looked for ways to ban it and prevent its sale and prevent its use. One of the things that he did was gin up the idea that sulfites were bad for you, so he could label wine contains sulfites and force that through on everyone in America and then monger fear around it. We are stuck with this because of his anti-alcohol hatred and nothing else. Now, the reason why people think that wine from Europe doesn't contain sulfites is because they're not required to label it. And then people will go to Europe and think, well, it doesn't say it contains sulfites. I love European wines and they don't cause headaches, so it must be because they don't contain sulfites. They contain sulfites in exactly the same amounts anywhere on Earth. And the thing about setting in Europe where you're in a lovely place, let's say you're in Stade skiing and you're drinking some lovely Chenin Blanc and it's just great, that wine will taste better than anything you've ever had. And experiences like that are delightful. But it's not because the wine doesn't contain sulfites. Like all wine, it does.
What's your last word on sulfites? Are they wonderful? Do they dance? Do they make you happy? Do they make you sad? Do they sit around and do nothing? Are they lazy? What's your last word on sulfites?
Here's the thing on sulfites. Their use is closely monitored and legislated by the government. There are safe levels. Now, that isn't to say that sulfites are completely benign. Please don't snort the powder. Please don't snort any random powder, but don't snort sulfite powder. And don't inhale the vapors coming off of the liquid solution. And if you have a liquid solution of sulfites, store it in a safe, approved container. Sulfites have a benefit for us. They prevent food from spoiling and reduce food wastage. They keep our wine fresh and good tasting and prevent its color from changing. Used in moderation and done correctly, sulfites are a benefit.
What if I have a liquid solution of metabisulfite in water? Do I inhale the vapor coming off of it?
No, don't do that. That sulfite solution can commonly be used in home winemaking. Usually you're directed to dissolve a certain amount of sulfite powder into liquid and then into water, and then use the resulting liquid to sanitize your equipment by spraying it or dunking it. If you inhale the vapor from that, what happens is the sulfur dioxide vapors will come in contact with the mucous membranes in your lungs or on your eyes, anywhere where there's water for them to react with, and it can cause the production of sulfurous acid, which is extremely irritating. On the other hand, honestly, it's only about as dangerous as a steaming kettle. Don't inhale hot steam, don't inhale sulfite vapor powder, and you will be fine.
Fantastic. I will remember that, and I now know where the burns came from. What are some common foods that we all enjoy that we might actually have more of a reaction to potentially than that red wine with all those nasty sulfites?
Well, that's a great question, because red wine or white wine in Canada can have a certain amount of sulfur dioxide parts per million, and it's closely regulated and very, very closely monitored. But things that you might not consider having high levels of sulfite are things like raisins. Raisins can have up to 1,250 parts per million of free sulfur dioxide as a preserved fruit. That's 10 times, 20 times what you will find in wine. Canned tuna, way more sulfur dioxide than you would find in wine. French fries, instant noodles, preserved meats, just about any kind of food which is designed to last and be shelf stable is going to have sulfites in it. You've already eaten sulfites today, and here's something that most people don't know. Not only do yeast produce sulfite, you do too. As a byproduct of your own metabolism, you're going to produce a few parts per million of sulfur dioxide that will be carried in your blood. Your body will break it down with that sulfite oxidase, and you'll be fine with it. But you are a living, walking person that has sulfite in you already. A little more isn't going to hurt, used right.
All right. Thank you so much, Tim, and enjoy a drink on us.
Hey, thanks for all your questions today. And if you enjoy these videos, go right ahead and click on that bell and give us a like and a subscribe. Thanks.